Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us for another week of Red Lotus Life. This is my co-creator here in Red Lotus Life, Sarah Elizabeth Hoffman. She's amazing in so many ways. And I love how we have been co-creating these conversations around domestic violence and intimate relationships, but healing from that, because the conversation just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. This is something that we actually recorded last week, and we said, nope, we have way more to say. We have way more to say about this, way more to share. So we didn't do it last week. Yeah. And I wanted to also preface this, that where Sarah Elizabeth is, she's had a lot of weather, tornado winds, high winds, stuff like that. And so her connection might be a little lagged just a little bit, but we're going to say, you know what? It's going to work out. It's going to be just fine.
Yes, that's those intentions.
Yeah. So today, the reason why we're having this conversation is because we had so much engagement with the boundaries workshop that we did, and the expanded conversations that we had around that. We specifically had someone ask us to talk about red flags. And so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about red flags. We're talking about disassociation and also the mind-body connection. So what is a red flag? We will define that. What is disassociation? We're going to define that. We're going to give examples on that. And then also the mind-body connection, which is huge, 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 always constantly communicating to us. Our body is a vessel. It's always communicating to us these red flags. And also how to use them to enhance your relationship and to gauge your relationship as to where is this? Because I was somebody who was in very extreme domestic violence relationships, intimate relationships, and had zero clue. I was completely disassociated, zero clue, knowing what my body was telling me. So we're going to go over all of that today. Really excited.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So to get started, I think that we're just going to sort of define what a red flag is and what that looks like, what that feels like. So I think it's important to point out that a red flag can actually be different depending on who you are, depending on the relationship that you're in, because something that's a red flag to me may actually not be a red flag to someone else whatsoever. So they are very dependent upon the individual and, what triggers any said person. And then we also have your typical red flags that we see, all over the internet, that are really, really common and sort of can help us gauge and identify, especially when we're first starting out doing this work. So we have things like gaslighting, like word salad, triangulation, love bombing, all of those typical things that can show up in so many different ways. And then there's also, red flags that are maybe not so common. So.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive deeper into this because you're exactly right. There's some people there's the typical textbook red flags out there that even that, like you can hear that over and over again. We're going to go over those. But you can hear what they are over and over again, like gaslighting. But I'll be honest, when I finally realized that I was in this type of relationship, I literally had to go and Google, what is gaslighting?
Me too.
Yeah, because I didn't quite know. And some of these red flags that they say are red flags weren't red flags to me. I was okay with it. I didn't feel as if I was being disrespected in certain ways. But then there were other times and issues that were happening, like interrogation, that I was saying, that I actually did feel as if that is a red flag to me, where other people were saying, oh, well, they just want the details of your life. Fine. It's not a red flag to them. So love that we're diving deeper into this.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts about disassociation, because you and I have known each other for so long that both of us knew each other when we were out of our bodies. We were disassociated. And then we really supported each other as we started to do this deep, deep work with Spiral and the Spiral modality, that we literally supported each other coming back into our bodies to become embodied and to reconnect that mind-body connection.
Yeah. Okay. So disassociation is again another one of those terms. It's a psychological term. We use it in psychology so much. But it's another one of those words that we don't really fully understand sometimes what it actually looks like, what it actually means. And so, I just have some notes here just so I make sure I get it right. But it's when we're feeling disconnected from ourselves and the world around us. You may forget about certain time periods, events, and personal information, or you may feel uncertain about who you are. And this is just sort of a textbook definition. Zoning out or daydreaming is also considered a form of disassociation, but it's like a much milder form. We have, sort of the mild traumatic experiences all the way to like extreme traumas where we quite literally black out. We don't remember large portions of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also one that the masculine might actually relate to a lot. That can show up a lot with, anger. So, people just become so angry so quickly, and then just all of a sudden that like there's no recollection, or maybe they experience something traumatic and it just, it's just gone. I know that I personally have. There's definitely been experiences that until my memory has been jogged, I will just blank out, not remember them. And it's been such a process for me, this embodiment journey, given the fact that I can literally remember one of the last moments where I was experiencing a traumatic experience. I was having a traumatic experience, and I literally felt myself disassociate, leave my body. Everything sort of got, the voices around me got quieter, and I was no longer able to even, I wasn't hearing what was being said. The words were just like muted, just completely gone.
I think a good example of that for some people, just because I'm the one who always likes to give these reference points, right? Like, so as you're speaking about that, I'm thinking about the different scenes in movies, right? Where there's this like very traumatic experience going on, and all of a sudden you see like the main character, like the sight is a little blurry, the sound is muffled,
slow motion,
that everything's slowing down. Yeah, this is the beginnings of disassociation. And I was somebody that I didn't realize. I always, whenever you're talking to therapists or you're starting to dive into this type of stuff, they always go back to childhood. Mm-hmm. Right. And so for me, whenever I would think about this, I would think about childhood stuff. And I don't really remember, really anything like this happening and disassociating. So I would always think, oh, that was in childhood, so this doesn't apply to me. When I realized, and I was going through my very first, my third spiral session. I remember this when I was the client. My energetic imprint of when I disassociated and blacked out was when I was 20 years old. Mm-hmm. I was already in my adulthood. Zero remembrance about what happened. And it was a super traumatic experience. So that's when my mind started to really open up to the big picture, I guess, on all of this when it comes to disassociation. And then also realizing how much of my life have I really been disassociated and not in my body. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So prior to us getting on this call, you had said that someone had asked you, well, what exactly does that mean? Like, you say disassociation, you left your body. Well, then who was there your whole life? Right. Right. And that's what you were saying. Like, who was there your whole life? Would you mind speaking to that? Because what you shared with me was really valuable, I felt.
Yeah. So basically, when we're talking about embodiment versus being disassociated, we're not connected to our feelings. We're not connected to our emotions. We're not connected to the the sensations in our body that our nervous system creates for us, and connects us to the mind, in order to be able to logically express what we are actually experiencing or how we're feeling. I think that so many times, again, we hear this word disassociation, but we don't have that sort of embodied sense of what that looks like, what that feels like. So, are we able to actually feel when we're sad? What does it feel like? Are we able to identify when we are in a state of repressing? Are we able to identify when we're in a state of, like, when you are just kind of zoned out? I can remember one of the things that I noticed before I really understood what it felt like to be disassociated, or what that was. I would get called out because I would be zoned out. And also, in some ways, on my journey, like, what I would eventually learn was it was somewhat of a superpower, because there's like a direct connection to source, right? And so that also, like, redefining gifts as I have become embodied, and the descent has happened. It's being able to reconnect back with that energy and with those gifts. But I would just completely zone out, completely leave, and people would call me out. Like, hello, Hoffman, like, where are you at?
I know. I mean, it's so true, right? You can tell it's just not being present. You're not present. You have
Right.
left your body because whatever's happening is not safe. So you're just not present there, and you're almost on autopilot. And so I love that you talked about the emotions, because that is the mind-body connection, right? The mind-body connection is being able to feel those emotions and to understand what those emotions are actually sharing with you. I think it's also really great about, like, how does this actually make you feel, like, really connecting into that. A lot of times I think people mistake certain emotions for other emotions. Like, some people will think it's anxiety. I feel anxiety. But whenever I'm talking to my clients and I'm saying, okay, now, is it really anxiety, or are you feeling fear? Or are you feeling excitement? Are you feeling anticipation? Like, exactly what is that? Because we've been taught and conditioned as a society to not really feel our emotions, definitely not to express our emotions, right? Because we all want to be accepted and not rejected. And especially if we are in some kind of domestic violence situation, we're walking on eggshells the whole time. So it's like, what really is that feeling, and how, like, does it make you feel good? Or do you not like how this makes you feel? I think this is just really big. I feel like, bottom line, that's red flags, right? Red flags is, how does it make you feel as an individual? Does it make you feel good? Does it make you feel, you're like, I don't like how this makes me feel? And then identifying, well, what exactly am I feeling?
Right. Are you feeling safe, or are you feeling unsafe? And I think the other really, really important point to make here is that dissociation is a trauma response. It is your body's way of escaping trauma, of coping, and it's something that we 100% can overcome. Yeah, I mean, that's been such a valuable part of this work, and one of the reasons why I did want to become a spiral practitioner and a womb spiral practitioner, because that has been a huge part of my journey, and it was because that I was able to utilize the tools, and just like Lori was sharing, when we were both in the client seat, going through these levels, and just really, really coming back to a place of landing and embodied.
I like how you spoke about connecting back into the gifts and developing those gifts. When we're talking about gifts, it's all the gifts, it's all the clairsenses, and you can go and find out what those clairsenses are, but everybody has them. All of us have them. And what happens when you become embodied is that you do connect with those gifts again. And that is how everything, all of your bodies are in your bioenergetic field. It's the biofeedback, right? The biofeedback is giving you all of these messages and all of this guidance that is communicating every red flag in your life. Even don't go down that alley, right? So not even just necessarily with relationships, but I really like how we're going to dive deeper into some specific red flags here and give examples, because this, depending on how the person that you are in a relationship with responds, and you can go back and check out the other videos that we've done on embodiment and consent and just all kinds of things, and communication even. So when you're able to communicate these red flags, you can really take a look at, how does this person respond to you? Is it a response or is it a reaction? And is this a way that you can actually grow? Because one of the things that I've noticed, I'm in a very healthy relationship now for 15 years. We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary.
Yay.
Yeah. So there is life after domestic violence. When I bring up some red flags and I feel safe and can communicate these things to my partner, then our relationship actually grows. We will actually shift our behavior. And it goes for me too. It goes both ways in every single relationship. It's both ways. So we're able to take these red flags, we're able to communicate them and then make it better. Whereas if you are in a relationship that is not necessarily healthy for you, it's going to be very defensive. It's going to turn into gaslighting. It's going to be, you're crazy. It's going to be all these things. And you're also going to be told not to feel that way. So do you mind if we dive into the actual red flags?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Did you want to go ahead and list those off?
Okay, yeah. So some of the sort of like traditional red flags were like gaslighting, word salad, triangulation, love bombing. Yeah, those are some of the ones that I can come up with just right off the top of my head. And then, you know, one of the big red flags, like you actually mentioned earlier, for me, this is a red flag, and it may be a lesser known red flag, but interrogation. You know, when someone comes to you and they're just shooting off question after question after question after question after question, but there's not ever any real curiosity around, you know, a deeper conversation. They're just asking you questions. They're gathering intel. And then what's it going to be used for later? You know, why are they asking all of these questions? Is it going to be thrown back in your face? Is it going to be turned against you? There's lots of different reasons. I've seen it used in many different ways, but for me, when there's no real curiosity around a deeper level of conversation, or even developing into an actual conversation, then that's just a complete no for me. Invalidation, another maybe less talked about. Oh, go ahead.
Can I speak to interrogation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because everybody has different experiences with all of this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so interrogation, like that's a huge red flag to me too, because it's the same. It was used to gather information. It was also used to gather information that he may not have had. And so he was kind of validating or confirming his beliefs or the stories that might have been going on in his head. But it got to the extreme point with interrogation with me, where it was even time. Like it got to the point where if I said I was going to the grocery store and I wasn't back by a certain time, there was all this interrogation that happened. And it wasn't because he wanted to find out, oh my gosh, did you have a hard time at the grocery store? Like what happened? You know, was there traffic? Was there this? Was there that? And just like genuinely concerned. But it wasn't. It was, why were you gone so long? Who were you talking to? You know, like all of those things. It should have only taken you 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Like that's the type of stuff that there's a difference here. There's a difference between genuinely just wanting to know you and what's happened in your life that day, or trying to gather that information.
Big difference. And another question that I would typically hear was, did you see anybody that you knew?
Did you talk to anybody? Yeah. Did you talk to anybody? Or I'd be like, hey, guess who I saw? Why'd you talk to them? You know?
Exactly.
And you'll know. So this is the embodiment piece. How does your body feel? Do you feel constricted as if you did something wrong and you're like a little kid going, what did I do wrong? Or are you open and going, oh yeah, I ran into so-and-so, haven't seen them forever. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
what is your body telling you?
Yeah, it goes back to that piece around being are we in a state of contraction right now, or are we in a state of expansion? Yeah, do you feel safe? Do you feel like you just want to continue to share, or are you being tentative and not really wanting to share much? It really and truly is all about how you feel.
Yeah. It actually got to a point with me in that type of situation where if I did like somebody, I was ducking and dodging at the grocery store. So notice your behavior too, because I didn't realize I was doing that. If I saw somebody, I'd be like, oh, I have to go down this other aisle because I can't stop and talk to that person. And I didn't realize, because I was like, what if somebody sees me? What if I'm late getting back home? It got to that point with me. So I don't know. There's just some things to really have in your awareness and notice your own behavior as well as the person that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the reasons why you are or are not doing any given thing? So the next thing that I wanted to discuss is invalidation as being another red flag. Are your feelings being validated when you share that you have a certain issue or there's a topic that you'd like to discuss? And is there any resolve? Is there ever any resolve? Because if your feelings aren't being acknowledged, if you're not being seen, you're not being heard, and you aren't able ever to have a discussion that changes the dynamic in some way, then that's 100% a red flag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anything that's being swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about that later, whatever it is. Yeah, no resolution.
But yet it still comes up and it still comes up and it still comes up over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any that you would like to discuss specifically?
I like that you talked about the love bombing. I wanted to also talk about one that I think goes along with that, and that's jealousy.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole cycle, right? So like the love bombing kind of comes in and it's like, oh my gosh, this person really, really loves me. This person really enjoys me. This person is showering me with attention and whatever it is, right? Because I will say, I don't know if this is for everybody, but I have found that authentic relationships that are healthy, it's not love bombing.
A slow roll.
It's a slow roll and it's getting to know each other, and it's just remembering, like, yes, there's special things that happen, but it's not this like you're like full attention love bombing in the very beginning, especially and then all throughout, and then this turns into the honeymoon cycle. And so I'm sure many of you have heard about that. We can talk about that on another one, but this turns into so then there's this jealousy piece. And I remember also, I was pretty naive to all of this. So I remember also anytime that there was jealousy that was happening, I would think, oh, he really likes me, or something like that. And it felt kind of good. Like I'm important to him, it felt kind of special to him in that way. And then it got the extreme version of this is going down a road. This is my experience going down a road and you know how you're casually just looking out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Well, casually looking out the window, and all of a sudden I'm looking at these guys. I'm looking at these guys, and then I'm getting like kicked out into a parking lot next to a group of guys that I don't even know what's happening here. Like what's
Or
happening
you're trying to get
they're
there.
driving off. Yeah, because I was looking at these guys and that's who I want to be with. So jealousy is not healthy, period. I'm just going to say that right now. Jealousy is not healthy. It's super toxic. I've experienced myself being jealous. It's not a good feeling to have. And here's the other thing too that I would like to talk about, just bring in very briefly, is that there is, there's this whole perpetrator, victim, offender type thing that goes on. And so for anyone who has experienced this, like myself, I have also done this. So even though I'm talking about jealousy, I'm not saying I've never been jealous. I'm saying like, yes, I've been jealous. And that's a red flag. That's a red flag even for me to go, why am I jealous right now? Why am I jealous right now? I need to take a look at what's going on here with myself. So
Yeah.
Jealousy was a big thing for me because I thought it was a positive in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because I was so naive to it. And then it was extremely toxic.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, one of the points that I like what you were just sharing, as far as looking at yourself, because that's what I wanted to share, is that I think that it depends a little bit upon, are you using, is it extreme? Is it being used as a reaction? Is it a reaction, or are you looking, like if I felt jealousy, what I would do is simply look at myself and look at the conditioning around the reason why it's showing up. And in that way, to me, I feel like it can be a positive, but I think it takes a really healthy relationship to be able to even have those conversations. Otherwise, absolutely red flag for sure.
Yeah. And it comes right back to what I was saying about red flags can be used to create stronger relationship, even with self, right? These red flags are communicating something and saying something's off, even within self. So yeah, I love that.
I don't know. Do you want to talk about gaslighting?
Yeah, gaslighting was so funny to me. Like I said, when I literally had to look it up, be like, what is gaslighting? Like, this is such another term that's just thrown around all the time. And basically my conclusion was, it's just anytime I'm being told what to feel, anytime I'm just being told that, and a lot of times it's that whole phrase. If anybody says to me, that didn't happen, or you're crazy, that is such like, that just sets me off. Because then I go, actually, it did happen. And this is how I feel. And we need to take a look at that, and same, when somebody comes to me and says that too. And I go, okay, we need to take a look at this then, because gaslighting is 100% when somebody's just telling you how to feel. They're trying to tell you that something didn't happen. And this is how you're supposed to feel about it.
Right. And so one of the points that I'd like to bring up that I find fascinating when we're looking at the cumulative effects over a lifetime, and how do we get to this place where we even allow ourselves to be gaslighted, quite literally. And I know we've been sort of referring back to childhood quite a bit, but quite literally, when you look at gaslighting in its context, when we are children and as parents who have children, what are we doing to our children when they fall down and they get hurt? And we're automatically going, don't cry, it doesn't really hurt, get back up, dust it off. And so that's what sort of led me to start pausing. Like, I create a pause and watch to see what the reaction's going to be. Do they sort of move through it on their own, or are they actually really, really hurt? Because as soon as we start to say, you're not really hurt, it doesn't, you shouldn't be crying, we're telling them, we're gaslighting them and telling them how to feel or how not to feel. And so that right there starts that process of, we start to repress and, oh no, I'm not actually able to express how I feel.
Oh yeah.
And that's
in childhood.
right. Totally.
You're okay. That's the whole thing, right? You're okay. And then what's the biggest thing when somebody says, hey, how are you doing? We all immediately, I'm fine, even though we've had the worst day of our lives. Yeah. So it absolutely starts back in childhood. Most conditioning, all conditioning starts in childhood.
Right. And with the best of intentions too. I mean, I'll say that definitely I was that parent. I've been that parent when, especially, in my younger days when I first became a parent, before we started to do this work and, the conscious awareness started to expand. And so, we know better, we do better.
Yeah. And not to go off on a little side thing on the parenting thing, but my kids are older now. They're all adults. And one of the things since I've started learning this and realizing that, and that whole like, oh, you're okay. I mean, we were definitely those parents that were that. And now I know better and do better. So now I actually, instead of saying, oh, you're okay, you're going to be okay, I actually say, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? How can I support you right now? What do you need from me? Like that. I've totally changed the dialogue because I did not realize. And it's, it's just how, like you said, it's best of intentions.
Right.
But one of the biggest things that you can say to somebody, especially your kids, right, is to say, are you okay? Instead of telling them they are.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a whole other thing. We could do one on that just all by itself.
Totally.
I would love for you to speak on isolation. And then I have one more that's not necessarily a textbook red flag that I wanted to bring up and speak to.
Okay. So I believe one of the things that we were kind of speaking to when we were talking about the subject of isolation is encouraging codependency, like financial codependency and emotional codependency, and getting to this place where this one person is the center of our universe and we're not allowed to go outside of ourselves for anything, for any emotional support, for financial support, our own means of financial support is typically, dwindled down, or there is, it can be a lack of, and it gets us into this position of actually not having the means to do something different or to get out if we need to, because we're so dependent on this one person that it takes a lot of work to get out of that situation.
It really does, which is why people stay. That's why people stay in these situations. So I work a lot with domestic violence survivors. And this is one of the key things. Yeah, with isolation, the more I don't want to say mainstream, but the more textbook definition of isolation is where you're literally isolated. All of a sudden you realize it's one of those moments of how did I get to this point, right? You look around and you realize you have no other relationships in your life besides the one person, that intimate relationship that you have. Now, when I was going back to going, how did this happen to me? Right? How did this happen to me? I remember when it started, and it'll happen pretty fast, this isolation piece, but I remember.
But you don't notice it.
You don't notice it. And I remember thinking, wow, he really wants to just spend time with me. Like, wow, this is really special. He just really wants it to be alone time and not with our friends and not with our family, and really just, special, right? Special time. But that wasn't the case in the extreme part of things. And I realized when I was really needing help and support, I had very, very few people that I could actually reach out to and ask for help to get out of these situations. When you talked about encouraging the codependency, that one I think is really huge too, because we don't notice. We don't notice that this is what's happening. And something around encouraging codependency emotionally could look like you're talking to your best friend about your, something major that's happening in your life, and they can overhear you on the phone or something like that. And then when you're done, they'll say, oh, but I am here for you. Why can't you talk to me about these things? Or I want you to talk to me about these things. And so pretty soon you're relying, being codependent on this one person for all of your emotional support. The same thing.
And yet there is none.
Yeah, there is none, because you're getting gaslit. You're getting told how to feel. There's invalidation. There's all these things, right? So and then with the financial, that can look like you have this really, like for me, I was very career driven. I always actually had a really good job. But for some of my clients, that was one of the first things that they were asked to do, was quit their job. Quit their job. Oh, and you can just be home, you can stay with the kids, and you can take care of the house. And some people don't even have children, but they were, oh, I can support you. And now they don't have the financial means, like zero. They had no access to their bank accounts. They have no money to be able to go and get a place of their own, or they are fully 100, they don't have anywhere to go. And that's when you see someone going to like the domestic violence shelters and things like that, or even get into trafficking, because I also work with trafficking survivors. So that's also how a lot of this starts to happen. And this is when you start to find yourself in these what may feel like hopeless situations.
Right. Yeah, this was a situation where I definitely experienced gaslighting. There was a particular time when I was actually told that if I did get a job, that he would leave me. And then when I would later bring it up, I never said that. I don't remember saying that. Those words never came out of my mouth. And that's like a classic example of gaslighting right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another one with this is even like physical possessions. I was working with somebody one time where, and most people, I was one of these people. I didn't get to take anything. Most people leave with very little possessions. When they're able to leave, they leave with very little possessions. But I remember with hers wasn't as necessarily physically violent. It was more emotionally violent. And she looked around, and he's like, you can't take anything. What do you mean you're going to take the kids' bed or whatever, like the kids' things? What do you mean you're going to take that? You're not taking that. I bought that. I paid for that. And so she had to really realize, even though, and in this situation, she had a job and everything, and she was paying for all this stuff. But when it came down to it, like he was actually the one really paying for it. Her money was just going into a bank account, but anyway, the whole the whole thing, all these red flags end up coming out on this as well. So that's why I say it's really important to be able to see, like, how, when you bring these situations up, how is the other person reacting or responding?
Mm-hmm.
Are they wanting to work with you on things? Because I'm not saying that these red flags are automatically you're in a domestic violence situation or abusive situation, because if you're able to work with these and then communicate in a healthy way, it actually, again, strengthens that relationship.
Yeah.
Or it goes the other way. You can't take anything. I own it all.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the difference between, is there a connection or is there not a connection? And also, like, how long does it take to make that distinguishing factor? Education goes a long ways.
Education goes huge. It's huge. So that's why we're actually even doing any of this here on YouTube. We appreciate your time. Did you have anything more to add to this before we wrap up?
No, I don't think I have anything else. Just wanted to say, please, please, please do join the discussion. Let us know what you enjoyed hearing about, what you learned, if there's anything specific that you would like to learn or for us to discuss. And And thank you for being here. So much gratitude.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your time, your space, your energy with us. We know that you're busy in this day. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this, if there's anything that you learned from this, or if you know anyone that could benefit from this, because a lot, like I said, a lot of times people do not realize they're in these situations, and it takes somebody else to show them and educate them and kind of show them a different way. So please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We would absolutely love that. Also, if you want to dive deeper into this and you'd like to experience transformation of unweaving this conditioning and really beginning to live a life that you love after abuse, or if you even just want to learn more about any of the things, we have deep transformation that begins to happen in the Red Lotus Life membership. That link is right here in the comments below. Please join the conversation. We would absolutely love to hear if there's anything specifically you'd like us to talk about. So, all right, we look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.
And live your life today.